So we'll have some time to talk through that because it looks different in every single community. And Krista was explaining to me yesterday her experience with her local United Way, which could be different than all of yours because there are 900 United Ways across the country and they all look a little different. So, in Augusta, we cover 11 counties. We have a pretty decent footprint, but in some communities, it's one county and it's run by one person. And I worked for United Way in Atlanta and it's 200 staff that covers 13 counties. So they all look very different shapes and sizes, but a part of our role, which Krista will talk today, as we get started on some of these questions is how, we want to make sure that you are equipped with some tools and that you're really empowered to go and do something with what you've heard today. Because on my end, I get to be the beneficiary of the great work and the passion that these other three leaders have up on the stage. And they know the importance of giving back. And when they connect with organizations like United Way and some that you see on the screen, our entire community wins. And so I'll be here to bring that perspective to this, to say we need each and every one of you, regardless of the size of your yard, regardless of how long you've been at your company, regardless of how many employees you have there. You as a corporation, you as an individual have something to offer. And we in the nonprofit space need you to make our communities safer, stronger, more robust, because then your business wins and our community wins also.
Thank you very much. And, to that point, across the 1,647, and I fact checked that with Ryan yesterday, member companies that we have in ReMA, the good work is happening. We are doing good things across the communities, both, here in the States and internationally. And I think where sometimes we get hung up is telling that story or getting started. How do I do this? Where do I begin? Does it have to be, a multi-million-dollar investment? And the answer is no. There is not, one size fits all. And, so hopefully today we can debunk some of the myths and like Brittany said, inspire you to, take a start, or if you're already doing things, tell that story, and build upon, that. But David, I want to start with you. From a large company perspective and, being your role, how do you build the community participation initiatives? What does that look like? What is your role in that? And if you could just share some of those.
Let me guide you through what we do. So as I already mentioned, Aurubis is about to celebrate its 160th birthday in a couple of weeks. The facility that we're building right now, or that we have built and operating right now, is the first greenfield investment of Aurubis in over 110 years. That implicitly says a lot about the age of our other facilities, and we do certainly hope that Aurubis Richmond will be here for the next century. So we really have the long-term perspective. When we go to some place, we make a commitment. And we want to become an active member of the community. We want to be good citizens. We want to contribute. We want to carry our own load and contribute to the improvement of our environment. We care. Our employees live in our neighborhoods. We have a responsibility from a social and an environmental perspective. So really being active on the social engagement front for us is a key priority. It's part of our DNA. I'm really proud that we are doing what we're doing. So are our employees. And we can see that also when we reach out to the community, that the way we are received, is also, basically taking into consideration what we're doing, that we are so present. People know Aurubis. I hope many of them know how to spell it by now. It's not easy, especially we come from Hamburg and there's Airbus. So sometimes when people come to apply, they just knocked on the wrong door. They wanted to go to Airbus, but come to Aurubis. It's just, the letters and stuff. That issue doesn't exist in Augusta. Anyway. So what is it it's really for us, it's something we truly believe in. We believe it's not just a nice to have. It's really ingrained. It's a responsibility that we very actively take on. So what is it that we do? First of all, we have, and that is the same across all sites, we have a strong corporate social engagement program. And you see, I think you can see it, yeah, an overview, first of all, of the 4 different buckets that we have. So it's for one, it's knowledge and education, which is targeting the society around us. So we go into elementary, primary, middle, and high schools. We support the technical colleges, universities around us. We cooperate with them. We have apprenticeship models that we build up to. So all of this feeds into really having an impact on knowledge and education, improving the prospects of the people that live in our neighborhoods, in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
The second topic is environment, where we, as a smelter, obviously we have a very close view on and want to make sure that we are living up to the highest standards, and that we support initiatives that drive the environmental agenda forward. The local social engagement, culture, and sports is something which also supports the well-being and creates a more attractive environment. And then the participation, which is by far our biggest bucket. It's not just visually with all the logos. It's also based on the amount of money, which is significant. We have a $230,000 budget every single year for social engagement. And the bulk of it goes really into that, of which United Way is really the strongest pillar within that segment. So we're engaged on all of these topics from a budget perspective. So what do? We support individual projects. We give general donations. We have scholarships for not just our employees, but in general. We would like to, and that's the Women for Medals initiative from Aurubis that you see here on the left-hand side under knowledge education. That's a specific scholarship. It's a global program that we have set up as Aurubis. It's interdisciplinary, so we work with other companies in the metals industry, trying to foster the prospects of women in the industry. We'd like to see more women active in the metals industry. And one way to do that is to encourage women to go into the typical STEM programs. So we have a scholarship to support women who want to take that decision to pay for a part of their tuition. So that's the first major bucket. It's essentially giving money to the good cause and making sure programs are being set up. The second topic, what we do is we're very, very active in the community. So when those programs hosted by the United Way, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I know you're going to talk about that. Aurubis employees, we are present at a lot of these events throughout the community. People can see us, they can talk to us. We have our Aurubis t-shirts on, so they know that we are affiliated with the company, and that by itself just gives a face to the company, which is good. So if ever any concerns come up or people are interested in a job, they know who to reach out to. The third topic, and the last main lever that we take is a broad selection of members of my team take active roles within these organizations. So we're members of the boards of United Way, of the American Red Cross, of the Junior Achievement, of Leadership Augusta Metro Chamber of Commerce. So individual people within the Aurubis Richmond leadership team have taken active roles in these organizations as well to support, to help drive the narrative, and that cumulatively really adds up to, I think, a very well-rounded picture. If you come into a neighborhood, and we're the first secondary smelter, so nobody has any idea what we're doing. It can very quickly be perceived as a threat. We invite people to our site. Have a look. We'll give you a guided tour. We have had school classes come to our facility, and we gave them a tour. Look, this is, if you're interested in STEM again, this is where you could work. It's paying above average wage rate salaries. It's a long-term attractive prospect for you. Can be a potential very attractive career. So really getting the interest and really letting people understand what it is that we do, and being active in supporting them in where their struggles lie, or where we could make their lives more colorful, more resourceful. Mm-hmm. That's what we do.
Amazing things. Brittany, let's touch upon a little bit more of how your partnership with Aurubis came about, and what did that look like in the beginning? What does it look like now?
Yeah.
And how do you work together?
So first of all, I think it was great that David set this up, and you can see on your screen, yes, it's lots of logos, but it's so much more than that. But a few years ago, when there was big announcements in Augusta that Aurubis was making a strong presence, I did some reach out to the team over at Aurubis. In the time, it was a very small team, and they were operating in trailers. And we said, let's figure out how we start something together. And we literally started very small. I think there's some slides that will run with a handful of pictures of some of that. But we didn't know each other. We were still trying to figure out what does relationship and partnership look like. And, what sort of commitment was Aurubis bringing, knowing that they were building a huge facility. That was first priority. They were also in the middle of hiring. I mean, there was just a lot of great growing pains that were happening along with that. And for a while, we knew that people couldn't leave the site. And so we said, okay, well, let's get creative and how can we bring something to you? And so we started off with these really simple, they're called notes of encouragement, and they are just that. And I'm telling you, friends, there are these 5x7 note cards that has like a little decoration on it, the little United Way logo. And we brought them on site to Aurubis and said, we'd love for all of you to take a few minutes and write an encouraging note to a kid. And you may be thinking, what kind of impact does that have? But what we know, especially when you look at some of the logos on this screen here, most importantly around that knowledge and education bucket. And, Aurubis is located in Richmond County, and there's high need in that county, especially in our school district. And what we know is many families are struggling, and many of the kids, they don't hear much encouragement at home because their parents are just trying to make ends meet or just don't have the capacity to provide much encouragement. And so what we did was we brought these note cards on site and allowed Aurubis employees literally to take 10 minutes. We brought some markers and some stickers, and they wrote an encouraging quote or something to these children that they didn't even know. And it was something simple like, I'm really proud of you. I believe in you. You can do it. Hang in there. And these notes were then distributed throughout the local school system, and they're put on the desks of these kids for the first day of school, or the day before testing, or right before they go home for Christmas break. And again, these are some notes where it's super simple to do, but the weight of having this note on these kids' desks when they walked into their third grade classroom and they saw that encouragement from a total stranger has more impact than you'll even imagine. And so it was high impact, but on the Aurubis end, it was low as far as there was no cost to it because I brought the materials, which were minimal. And it was a minimal time commitment, and it allowed Aurubis to stay focused on their priority, which was the building part, and but it allowed them to also give back and start to have some knowledge of what does community look like. And then they thought, well, that was pretty easy. Like, what is next? And so as we were still trying to figure out what the culture of the Aurubis team looked like, it was like, well, let's just try this next thing. And the next thing we had was we did this big school supply drive called Stuff the Bus. And we weren't really sure if putting big collection boxes in these trailers at the time would have much interest to employees, but the team at Aurubis put some boxes out and put some flyers that said what school supplies were needed. And then the team just brought in lots and lots of school supplies. And I know there's a picture somewhere of them then delivering the school supplies to us. And I'll tell you, the first year we did that, we thought, well, most of the time when a company does this for the first time, they may bring what I'm talking about, like a box of supplies. And then Aurubis called and said, well, can we bring the supplies to you? Or bring them. And they brought a van load of supplies, a whole van, because people were then becoming that much more interested in giving back because Aurubis had set the tone of, we want to make sure that we prioritize giving back. And for some, the giving back looks like going and buying school supplies. For some, the giving back means giving dollars. For some, the giving back is the opportunity to serve on a board or go volunteer somewhere. And we know that people have different capacity issues of what they can do, right? Or just interests of what they'd like to do. And so by offering this was one way to collect supplies, we were able to gauge what the interest was of the Aurubis employees. So they brought the supplies to us. And then the big day, we did this massive Stuff the Bus event. And we ended up stuffing 5 school buses full of supplies, using what Aurubis brought and a lot of other companies. But then the Aurubis team, had 5 or 10 volunteers that came over and helped us sort and count and load buses that went to our local school systems all on that day. And then you can literally see them in action because they have on, as David said, the shirt. And it's not just any shirt, my friends. It's a bright yellow t-shirt. And so you can't miss it. And so Aurubis is literally in town and in the room because they have their bright yellow shirts on. So that was in July. And the next thing was we do a big volunteer day called Project Serve in August. And Aurubis said, we want to do that. And I said, well, do you have a preference of where you'd like to be? And they said, we're still learning community. You place us with an organization that needs the most help. And that was a full-on exposure to one of the organizations that is now listed in this participation box because their employees were able to go on site, learn about what they do. And literally, y'all, they were like, I don't know, there was like some overgrown, massive area of like overgrown brush somewhere. And we asked the Aurubis team, we're like, can you just clear that? And they're like, okay. And they just jumped in, and like by the end of the day, despite 92 degrees and what felt like 170% humidity in Augusta, they went out there and they did it. And they made that sort of progress. So then literally they're outside sweating and doing the work, but also learning about the importance of this great organization in the community that also you would never just drive by if you're out and about because of their location, but it allowed them to get more engaged on that front. And then we really just kept building from there. We do a big Christmas event called the Empty Stocking Fund. And we went back to Aurubis again and said, we need help literally loading families, hardworking families in our community who don't make enough to make ends meet. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to help these families. Can you help us load cars one day for our Empty Stocking Fund distribution? And they said, we're there. And that day we had a huge line outside of the facility where we were doing the distribution. And so we stuck the Aurubis folks in their bright yellow shirts out in the parking lot, and they directed traffic. One, because you couldn't miss them. Two, because they'll do anything. And there's pictures again somewhere that have them like having fun out there, welcoming these families, making sure they were festive. They had the right hats on. So I'm saying that to give you kind of this progression of where we started and then how we've just built. But we figured out some employees at Aurubis like to do the Empty Stocking Fund. Some of them are most comfortable writing a note. Some of them want to go cut down all that brush in the really hot sun. And then when you add on, like David said, when you add on board leadership, know that the skill sets that the folks at Aurubis have and the folks that either you or your folks on your teams have is something that as a nonprofit, I couldn't pay for myself. And so then Aurubis got into putting people on board, and that next step, David's on the board of the chamber and some other places, and the director of finance at Aurubis is on our board at United Way. And you better believe that I could not afford to hire her on any given day. But what I need is her skill set and what she brings to our finance committee and our board meetings. And she's asking the extra questions from her corporate lens that my director of finance just either doesn't know or isn't exposed to. So they're asking the extra questions and pushing us in a great way to help make us more sustainable. And so that's just, a handful of examples of where we started with Aurubis. And now, they do sponsorships and they do a corporate giving program. They also do a corporate match onto whatever their employees give. And we can talk about some more of the other things later. But we started small. And if you have a company that's small, you can start small too. You may not have a $250,000 budget for community. Well, I guess most of you don't. But I bet you have a budget of $0 to do the notes. And I bet your local school system use those notes. Regardless of the community you're in, there's a school or 2 or 7 where those kids need to hear what your employees can write on those notes.
I couldn't agree more. As we pivot, I want to ask you, Marcie, what are some of your initiatives? So from that other perspective, like we talked about, from our smaller companies and our family businesses, what are some of the things that, and I know that we have some slides, some pictures of all of these things that can scroll. Will you just walk us through that for what you do?
Absolutely. Once again, I have 1 yard, 20-ish employees. This is a slideshow of what we've done combined. And so once some of these come up, they're all from Aurubis, right? These are the shirts that Brittany was talking about. These are events that have happened on our yard. This one's ours, probably a few. Things for me is we got to take care of people first, whether they're in our yard or outside of our yard. Cause here's the thing, right? This was advice that was given to me by a fellow leader. It goes, Marcie, I know you have a heart for community. However, if you don't take care of the people inside of your yard first, you're missing a mark. right? And so when we started this initiative, it was, okay, how do we take care of our people in our yard? How do they become comfortable, right? How do they step into a place from abundance versus scarcity, right? So if your people are struggling within your yard and they don't have the support, right, I would suggest you start there first, especially as a smaller yard. We have in our yard a care team. Our care team is of 2 people. Their job is to ensure that our employees are taken care of. And so we have things like an emergency fund, right, that they borrow against if they're tight. We have things like they celebrate birthdays. So every first Thursday of the month, we celebrate birthdays, and everybody's birthday is on that is in the break room, because we start with a huddle and we sing happy birthday off tune, right? And they get a gift card and they can buy themselves lunch, right? So we make sure that we cover them and that they are loved on before we go out. Now, once we go out, for me, my biggest thing was that I took away is that I can have the best intentions, and if I don't tell our story first, somebody was going to tell it. And then I have no say-so in it. And so these pictures, like those are our county commissioners. They came in. This is us at Earth Day with a nonprofit. Notice the hard hats are not scary. The machines are not scary. We make them approachable. We've done a poster contest at the school that our kiddos attended. And so I had more of a hand on who was the winner. These are the kind of shirts we put logos and cartoons. So again, this is Kat and I, and I'll talk about Kat in a second. Like, notice I'm not doing anything big. I don't have $250,000, but I can buy little balloons from Amazon, like little bubble things, and I can make my own stickers off of my own printer. Like, there are 1,000 ways across the room if that is what you're committed to. We do things like career days, right? We're like, can we tell you what we do? And so what I did for career day is I went to Hobby Lobby and bought a lot of little like gadgets, like from the dollhouse area. And so there was like little trucks and little windmills and things like that. And so we were presenting to a first grade class. And so what I did is I bought a big pot that looked like a smelter. And I would tell them, okay, guys, here's the thing. If you bring me this, and I would take a little bucket and a little car and something else, and I would put it in the thing, and a ambulance would pop out. And they'd be like, wow. And I said, but then you take this ambulance and you take this kitchen sink and it makes a phone. And they're like, wow. And it didn't cost me a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Time, treasure, talents. That's what you have, right? And I love what you all spoke about, because it's usually me or Kat. Kat, please raise your hand. We're the team. I'm on the boards. I'm the one picking up trash. Right? Kat makes me look good. She does all the organizing and she puts things right. Like, I'm like, Kat, I think we should do balloons and hard hats with our stickers. And she's like, okay. And she does it. We don't have a team. We are the team. I don't have, right, endless budget, but I have a heart for people. And so my thing, if you have a small yard, even if you have a corporate company, if you're not the person who naturally is wanting to be on the community, find that person. It doesn't have to be you. Because if it's not sincere, the community will know. If you're doing it because you just want it for business, the community will know. There's an authenticity that comes with it, right? And with this authenticity comes a story. Because here's the other thing. As a leader, all your yards are in a community have very specific needs. So perhaps your yard is in that community for a specific purpose you can walk into. Right. So part of our story, one of the first initiatives I took from after my leadership was, we took a big 30-yard container. We sprayed it. It got pink. We wrapped it. Right. And in big bold letters, because we work with Pink Warrior Advocates, and they're a cheeky, very local breast cancer support group. They're very cheeky. They're very edgy. We put on the side of it says, your can save hers. Right. And it was like, and so it stopped making cancer look scary, because that's not how they run, not this group. And so every year we have a Save the Cans campaign that is supported by our community. Right. That's what it takes. Right. And so what that opened for us, and this wasn't the intention, is we went from Facebook. I want to say we had like a 90% men following our Facebook page and 10% women to a 49-51. It has increased what we do, because now we have women who feel comfortable coming into our yard because it's a safe place for them to be, right? And so, right, some of the things I got off course. We've done Pink War Advocates. We've done the Noon Lions. One of the Noon Lions in our area has trained their customers to drop off cans. And we literally pay them thousands of dollars a year on cans. So we all win. We lock arms with them. How do we support you? Right? We do that. Another thing we do, is we bought these bins that were, you can see them in the corner there. Originally a business had approached us and wanted to do that. They backed out and we're like, okay, what do we do with all these bins? And we use them for anything and everything you could think of. So for example, our Rotary Club, they do a craft beer festival. Well, they come with cans. And so there, Kat and I go stuffing these red bins in our trucks and delivering them, right? So that can be recycled. Now, do they make a lot of money? No, they get maybe $30 worth. However, I get to be around leaders of the community, right? Our logo gets to be free in this place. And we're doing the right thing. But here's the thing. I didn't start with, let's get in front of the leaders and no, I started with, hey, this is the right thing to do. Right? Because if we know that one can take up to 500 years to biodegrade, then we get to stand on that and look at that too. So it might not make us millions of dollars, but we get to do the right thing when no one's looking. And so for us, that's what some of the things that we stand on. Another thing, this happened by being at a networking event through our Chamber of Commerce. This lady's talking about wreaths across America. And if you don't know wreaths across America, they're a great one. So what they do is they put wreaths at the cemeteries of veterans because they believe that people die twice. They die a physical death and then they die the last time someone says their name. And again, for me, I was like, I get to be a part of this. And so we start talking. I said, great. How can we support? Like, what can we do? And she says, at the end, a lot of the other wreaths across America, some of them just throw away the wreaths. We don't think that's right. We actually have a dismantling that happens in January. He goes, but last time, I tried to go to the yard to recycle the wreaths, but they were closed. So I had to drive around with these wires in the back of my truck. And I go, really? Where did you take them? Right? Because I don't know. I'm not the only yard. And she goes, Comal iron, but they were closed. And I laughed. I said, honey, don't you ever worry about that. If I have to open it for you, I will open up that yard. And so now it's an expectation that we're going to show up. I'm going to show up with my trailer. We're going to place all the wire things on there. I'm going to drive it so they don't have to worry about it. And what they do is, they don't want to handle money. And so our company, it pays directly to the Wreaths Across America, right? Not hard. Time, treasure, talents. That's what we get to work on. And my thing is, I cannot stress you enough. Earth Day for us, we literally will leave here, get home on Thursday at midnight. And Kat and I have Earth Day at a nonprofit on Saturday morning. And it's an all-day event. We will be there. Because out of there, you have a captive audience. These are the people who care. These are the people you want on your side. Get a table. But I'll tell you this, it may not be easy. Because what I found interesting is the environmentalists don't think of us, right? Because they see us as industrial. And so I had to nudge my way into these nonprofits that are out protecting the environment because they didn't understand what we did because all they saw were big trucks and big machines. And I'm like, whoa. I said, we're on the same team. And they would look at me and they'd be like, but you're industrial. I said, no, I'm just as green as you. I just do it differently. Right. And I got to tell that story by being in these places, right? Because they're already there. So even though I'm there with our company, I'm like, I'm talking to you and I'm talking to you and I'm talking to you. Right. And so what I explained to them is, I said, imagine a baseball team. You guys, you're the pitcher, you're the first baseman, your uniforms are clean. I'm the catcher. I have the equipment. I'm the one grunting. I'm the one sweating. That's me. But you couldn't do yours if I didn't do mine. And vice versa, right? So you gotta be out there. You gotta tell your story. You gotta be passionate, truly believe, and you gotta be authentic on why you're doing it. And the crazy thing is, it was actually that event 2 years ago. I met one teacher. And she had an environmental club and she's a private school and we start talking. I give her my card. I said, whatever you need. I said, I don't have an endless budget, but whatever I can do to help, right? Let me know. And I will literally end every sentence like that. What can I do to help? 2 years later, she sends me a message and she says, hey, we did a can drive. We're going to donate all the money to Pink Warrior Advocates. Notice the circle, right? It's closing on its own. Because, however, we don't have a budget to give the winners anything. Would you consider buying them pizza? Absolutely. I would have bought them pizza for a Tuesday. Like, I don't need a whole lot of reason, right? And so those are those kind of things that I didn't know that was going to come up from that event. I sure didn't know it was going to come from that teacher. I sure didn't know. And now, right, I got to speak to 20 students who genuinely care about the environment, right? Who went out of their way to collect cans because they believe it makes a difference. I got to make a presentation as to why it matters. And then this year they approached us because they wanted to do a field trip. So there I had 25 kids who are genuinely caring about the environment in hard hats and high vis in our yard. And they're engaged and they're asking questions. Like, these are the things it is our responsibility to steward, not only our environment, but of the next generation. And they're there and they are just so happy. And, right, I get to also realize I'm not running a nonprofit, right? So I get to say, hey, is it okay if I get to market this? Right? And they signed paperwork that it was good. And we got the most genuine interviews from these children that did not know. Because I'll tell you this, and it's not to badmouth the other ones, but when it comes to metal recycling, in my experience, it is very overlooked. I bought several books on recycling and metal's not mentioned. Right? So I get to create that space for our industry and be like, we're here too. And let me tell you our story, because we're in your homes and we're on the bridges. We're in your car. We're on your phone. Like, we're here too. And so for me, those are kind of all the things that I want you to start seeing it from a bigger picture. Start with your people in the yard. Take care of them first and then expand.
Thank you. There's so much there that, you're doing every day. And, you talk about the environmental advocates and things like that. And Earth Day is a wonderful opportunity for us to really kind of speak up and say, we are part of this. We do Earth Day every day. But from the perspective of regulations that a lot of times our facilities face, can you and David, maybe David, you want to start with this one? How does the participation help your organization? Like, when you're going in and you need to, modify a site plan or, talk to regulators and things like that. How do you utilize that community participation, to benefit the organization? How do they see you differently, I guess?
So that's a very good question. I think first of all, it puts faces to the name. Mm-hmm. Aurubis is known, and we're pretty far out from the city. So if it wasn't for our engagement, I'm pretty sure a lot of the people within Augusta would probably not know we're around or what we do. If you say we're putting a metal recycling facility in there, the main perception is industry. It is threatening. We're dealing with complex materials. We had initially some concerns around what would be the impact be on water quality, on air quality, et cetera. And I think by being present in the community, it takes away that fear to some extent. Mm-hmm. It's not perceived as threatening anymore. It's approachable. We're there. We're engaging. When we're out there in the community, it's yes, we're contributing, but I mean, we're also approachable. And when people have questions, we engage with the community to talk about what it is that we're doing.
The community. I mean, they live in these communities. That's
so. I think that quickly changed. So initially there was I think a lot of people walked around with some question marks. What is Aurubis really all about? And is that really good? And I think now we have really made an impact on that impression. So I think the general notion of Aurubis is a positive one within the community, which is very important to us. I think the effect on the business is twofold. Aurubis is not known. Is this attractive? Is it a career or is it a job? Which can be two fundamentally different things. And I think people see that, it is actually a great environment to work in. It has purpose. If you want to know why you're doing it, just not for the recycling and for the environment and keeping the materials in the flow. Nowadays, it's even supply chain integrity. So it's really, and basically supply chain, resilience, in the world that we're in now. Making sure that we have access to those materials is becoming increasingly critical with all the investments that are going on. Copper is on the forefront of everyone's mind at this point in time. And we have the opportunity to bring it back. So being a part of that journey, whether it's the sustainability part, whether it's the business part of it, making sure that the economy is supported with all the with all the growth ambitions that are currently on the table. Whatever it is that makes you thrive, you can find it. So on the employment side, it has really, I think, had an impact. We get questions out there like, how can I apply? What type of jobs do you offer? So it has really helped our talent acquisition process. I think on the environmental and the permitting side, the impact is soft. I think it exists. I think people are seeing that our intentions are good. We're here with a good citizen, with the right mindset, and we want to be an active part of the community for a very, very long time, which means we've got to build reputation and we've got to live up to the expectations. So it's very difficult to quantify that. But I think the positive notion towards what it is that who we are and what we do, is certainly helping. And then, I mean, ultimately, it's just the things that you've mentioned. And I believe there's still some subtle differences between some areas in the United States. I think Augusta is not that far yet on the whole recycling mindset. We have one single trash bin. Everything goes into the same bin. And Earth Day is also on our radar, where we proactively, like we communicate into the community that what we're doing, we're not subsidized. It's a viable, standalone, attractive business. It pays very well. It makes perfect sense that we do what we do. And with changing your behavior, you can make what we do so much more attractive. You can help us grow, if you understand and change your behavior in that direction. And so that's also where social engagement, that's more really in the longer term, but that's also where social engagement can have a significant impact, really changing the mindset. And I think particularly you see a lot of drawings from younger kids, where I think the notion is already very much more present, but we have to change behavior if you want to change the setting we're in. And I think that's also one lever to do that.
See this a lot. The kids drive the parents to, even in my own household. And I don't know, my son took batteries out of a toy and, Mom, what are you going to do with those? So the awareness young, and then they're driving, the adults. And what about for you, Marcie, as far as that, in the, how you interact with your town officials and things, is the awareness helpful for you?
I find it very, very helpful. And, my thing is I also don't want you to limit what community looks like either. Right. So, I'm part of an organization that lobbies for small businesses, right, at a state and a federal level. Right. And so, right, that's a bigger community. Right. And so my thing is they've asked me to be part of the leadership team. And again, you guys have heard some of the things we do. I don't necessarily have a whole lot of time, right? I've got my wife and all the things, but I'm like, wait, that matters. Small business matters. Right. And so through that, we ended up having the governor in our yard, which then brought, some people that I had been trying to reach out to that suddenly had time, and they're now in our yard and they get to see the cool things we have. And we have these bales of like stainless and copper around them. And they're like, well, what do you do? Well, if the governor's engaged, then suddenly they were engaged too. Right. But it's how you approach what your community is. Right. Another way, right. It was interesting because, we had one of the, county commissioners, right, approached me during one of the networking events, and she wanted to talk about recycling, because in our area, they did away with it. So I think at the county level, there's none. And at the city, it went to every other week. And so what we did, we actually upcycled. Somebody had recycled those clothing bins where you donate clothing. You know what I'm talking about? And we cleaned it up. We made it pretty. And what we did is we put that outside of our yard along with a hopper. And so what we did, we stood for our community and said, hey, I might not be able to speak to you about paper or plastic. However, when it comes to metal, here's your option. You can come here. You can drop it off anytime that's convenient to you. You don't even have to come in the yard. Drop it off. We're willing to stand in that. Right. And so the commissioner's talking to me and she's like, I really appreciate you kind of trying to come in and holding that space. Right. Because the recycling centers they do have certain hours, but ours aren't limited. Right. And so she's like, I appreciate you coming in and having that. We had some regulatory issues. I wasn't sure we're okay or not. And so I got to talk to my representative at a federal level, and he got to make a call. He made a call, making sure that everything was okay, that, right, the little guy wasn't getting picked on. Because that organization, when I reached out to be of support for them, had now a direct connection that puts me in front of this, right, this gentleman. We had a phone call, right? These are the kind of things that I'm not saying it made something magically happen. It was just nice to know that we were seen too. Right? I might not have billions of dollars for a lobbyist, but because I'm of service, I was able to ask, hey, this is going on. They're like, oh, well, let's talk to, right, so-and-so. And so-and-so made a phone call, just making sure we're good, right? It's those kind of things that support, because someone always knows someone. But again, it's got to come from a place of service first, right? And then whatever happens to bloom will bloom, right?
So like there's connection with the community that then sometimes comes full circle. And it's not even so much all of these events, but it's what we look like too. It's what our yards look like. It's people are always watching. We may not realize that they're watching, but they're always watching. And, for us individually, just rehabbing an older facility when we took over, unbeknownst to us, part of the commission lives very close by. We're located in a residential area. We're less than 2 miles from our local elementary school, a town park, and the high school. And when we wanted to go in and do an expansion, she stopped the meeting, the commissioner, to say, you did what you said you were going to do. You cleaned, you beautified, there's flowers everywhere, there's attractive looking fencing. That's part of the community too, so that we're making sure, I think David, you said it, as far as our responsibility, to show up and to do those things. So there's so many different avenues that it can take. Brittany, I wanted to circle back with you because we talked about this a little bit previously, and yesterday about the veterans. Can you just explain that story? Because I thought that was really something.
Yeah. So, as I was talking about kind of this progression of our relationship, partnership, however you want to frame it, we were again still trying to feel each other out. And as we got Aurubis and their team, their leadership involved in more activities, we were trying to see again what they gravitated more towards. But what we found was this became a relationship. It was not a transaction. It was not we raise money for United Way once a year and then we'll see you again 11 months later. It's way more than that. So we all know that there are transactions out there and then there are relationships. And because we have the relationship with Aurubis that we do, we were literally like in a casual meeting one day. And I said, as your employee, like your team is building, I said, do you have a lot of veterans? Because in the Augusta area, we've got a military installation there. And then we have just a lot of veterans that are in the community. They were like, yeah, actually we do. And then it turned into, you know what? We're having a lunch to celebrate our veterans on Veterans Day. And I said, okay, well, because we have this relationship now, it made it much easier for me to say, well, you know what? We'd love to come in, if you don't mind, come into that lunch and be a part of all of you and your leadership thanking the veterans for their service, but also letting them know where United Way has a space that's also serving veterans, because we have a program we run called Mission United. And so, 3 of us came in during that lunch that day, helped give out T-shirts and other things, and then said, we also want to let you know we've got this program to support veterans in our community who are either like new in the civilian workforce and trying to figure out how to navigate that, or quite frankly, if you're a veteran, it can be complicated and not super easy to know what sort of benefits that they're eligible for, and we can help them navigate that. So we were there to say, we're here as a resource to you. You know, David mentioned earlier, yes, they pay their employees well, but it doesn't mean that they still don't have some questions about some other things going on. So you sometimes just need someone else to ask these questions to. And, you know, some people later came up to us. They're like, oh, I want to get more involved with this. I want to get more involved with that. And I'm so glad there's a resource out there. Then they said, I had no idea United Way did that, because what they thought we did was only help quote those people unlike me. When in actuality, we're leaning in hard to help all of our people. And that could be because we're connecting them to volunteer opportunities. We're allowing them to get on boards. We're giving them an opportunity to give. Right? For some people, like, you know, being able to run a United Way campaign at your workplace, because you're offering the opportunity, people will do it because it's at work. It's easy to do. People can say, I want to give $5 a paycheck, comes out of their paycheck. And that is how they will give charitably, because it's an efficient, easy thing to do at work. And Aurubis allowed us the opportunity to come and offer that, to come and be in their space around the veterans, which then led to, we were talking about some other things that we've got going in the community. And one is a partnership with Lyft. And it's called Ride United. And we help people get to doctor's appointments, job interviews, you know, basic things. And it was after that meeting that someone from the Aurubis team said, you know what, once in a while, we have some people that can't get to work. Because David just said, they're located in a more isolated part of the community. And if you live 16 miles from the plant, so from the site, and your normal ride isn't going to work that day, you got a flat tire, your battery died, whatever the reason is, you can't get to work. Well, you know what? David needs those employees to show up. So at United Way, this program called Ride United, now we're here telling employees, if you have a little hiccup and you literally need that little Band-Aid, which is a ride to work for 2 days, we got you. So that not only helps the employee make sure they get to work, but it helps make sure that David can continue on his trajectory to make sure he's meeting the goals at Aurubis. So it's not just helping those people, it's helping all people. Because at some point we all run into a hiccup where you need a little extra something. But, you know, as mentioned, this came to be to talk about Mission United and to be engaged with their veterans in a non-traditional way, because we have such a good relationship where we just continue to talk about things where, if, you know, HR is saying people are struggling somewhere, where we can help meet that need and then let more people know about the sort of things we do.
Great. Thank you. I just want to be mindful of time, but, you know, one of the things that we talked about too, as we were kind of preparing and brainstorming on this, was don't get discouraged. Where you might set out and you might be seeking to help, you know, the nonprofits are often, you know, Brittany, you kind of reminded us all of this, Marcie and I yesterday, saying that they're running thin as well. You know, as much as we're owner operators and wearing lots of hats, and you starting up and again wearing lots of hats, so are the nonprofits. And so to not get discouraged, and where you might start to give, it may not be where you end up finding your purpose for that. Just kind of touch upon those things.
Absolutely. I think when you have that heart for like service, you want to, and you assume, right, that it's going to be received. And when they're busy too, it gets a little hard. So for example, Pink War Advocates, when I met with them the first time, I locked arms with the CEO, and it was great. We had this vision that the spin would do this, and we would use their people, and the 30-yard container would move, right? Well, she had some health issues. Right. And then I got the other CEO. Okay, great. I got to talk to her. That was good. Right. And so we were still locking arms, but it wasn't as committed as the first one. And then we go to the third year. She now has health concerns, right? Cancer came back. And then I'm left with a CEO that doesn't really know much. Right. And so the shift was, instead of me saying, well, this is all gone. So the vision went from working with them to simply working for them. Right. So we still do the can drive. Right. We just don't necessarily depend on them to, you know, push our information forward. Right. So we're still of service. It just looks different. Right. We've tried things that just don't work. But here's the thing. And seeing these pictures, I want to make sure I make this obvious. when in doubt, bring people into your yard. Right? So, and that doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Like, we celebrated 55 years and my father-in-law never got to do a ribbon cutting. And so I contacted the chamber because I knew some of the chamber, right? We go back to connections. They're like, well, this isn't usually what we do, but yeah, we can do that. And so we had some people, right, in our community. That's the picture, right, of me talking on the microphone with everyone, right? Because we had all these people come in, they'd celebrate ribbon cuttings. So we got to bring them in and tell our stories, right? The next one is, here's another thing that look in your state that can get you people in the yard. Texas has a historic business award. And so for businesses that have been in running business for over 50 years, you apply and then you become a part of Texas economic history because you've been in business for 50 years or more. Mm-hmm. And so that was another way. Right now, that got the commissioners and that got senators and that got my city council people, because I mean, I even had a proclamation from the governor because I had met him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, get them in your yard.
It snowballs.
Yeah, get them in your yard. If anything else, if you're going out and it's not working, bring them in and then the doors will open.
Any insight on that too, David?
I can only second that. I think one aspect of social engagement and bringing people into your yard. We had a big family day right after ribbon cutting, so we had the big ceremony where the governor came and a lot of politicians were on site. But that was more a formal event, mm-hmm. And yet we had realized so much as a team. We felt that was only one side of the medallion. We wanted to also mm-hmm. make sure we appreciate and celebrate what the team had done. And so often when we go to work, like, our families have only a vague notion of what it is that we actually do. So, and honestly, sometimes, and probably more a topic for a larger organization, I only have a vague notion of what some of the employees do. So, what really helps with bringing people onto the site is you bring everybody out of their usual context. You can engage directly. You become approachable. At the family day, I was not the president and managing director. I was actually in one of those water tubs where you throw the ball and when they hit you actually dump it. So it's like, if I ever rubbed you the wrong way, here's your chance to retaliate. And no, but seriously, it allows you to just engage so much differently. And then it changes also the behavior on a day-to-day basis. Like when you relate outside of work, when people understand how you tick outside of a meeting room, and when your family understands what it is that you do, and when you show that what everybody has done, how we have worked together to make this happen is highly appreciated. And let's take the moment to acknowledge that, to celebrate that. So, the social engagement is not just, as you mentioned, not just externally. It starts with the own team first. And that by itself creates a very, I think what I'm really proud of, or most proud of on within the Aurubis Richmond side is really the strong bond that we have created among the team.
They're your nucleus. They're your community nucleus.
Exactly.
And then it expands from there.
There's a significant amount of trust among everyone. We are familiar with each other, not just in day-to-day output, but we know each other personally. You can see on the pictures that people are happy to do it. To really become active in the environment, in the community or on site or whatever it is that we do, but like outside of the regular routine, and that has a value by itself that is, again, very difficult to quantify.
You know, we're kind of running tight. I wanted to leave some time for questions. If anybody in the audience has any questions, I know we had talked about Brittany had offered to. If anybody wanted to connect with their local United Way, she is able to assist with that. But does anybody have any questions for any of the panelists on what they do, how they do it, and how they've executed this, or how it applies to you? Nobody's answered all their questions.
One thing I'll say is, as we mentioned earlier, is that you may not have a $250,000 budget to do this work. And again, if you have a budget of 0, we can work with that. Mm-hmm. If you have a budget of 20 minutes, we can work with that. And as you think about ways to engage your team, don't discount what 20 minutes can do. And not only does it help the community, but think about what it does for morale. Think about it does with connectivity. As you were mentioning earlier, like, family day, you could dunk David if you wanted to, but you also get to know him as David, not the president. And by doing that, there's just so much camaraderie that happens with that. And so when you think about, maybe in your organization, if turnover is an issue, think about some things that you can do as it relates to community and culture, that if it's a family day or if it's the opportunity to engage some way that has someone that says, yes, I know that 10 miles away, I could go get a job for $1 more an hour, but I'm choosing to stay here because it's about way more than the paycheck, right? Yes, that's important. But what are the other things that are offered that keep people like, this is my work family, and it's more than just the job, it's the career, because they know that there's a team that's taking care of them, to your point, Marcie, inside the yard. And they also realize that you have, you've highlighted the importance of also giving outside, but you're taking care of your people first. So, if you think about kind of where you're limited, I would just challenge you all to think about, is it budget? Is it time? Maybe you have, if it's your yard, your organization is 50 people. And you're like, I don't know where to start with 50 people. Well, one thing that Aurubis did was when people gave to United Way, I think if you gave $5 a paycheck or more, then they had this like lunch at the end of the campaign to announce how much was raised. And then they did this. This is so simple, y'all. Like, you literally got a t-shirt. Okay. Who doesn't love a t-shirt? So Aurubis logo, Aurubis on the front, and then it has a United Way logo on the back. And there was like a long line. I was in charge of distributing shirts that day. And there was a long line. And because everyone has this great camaraderie at Aurubis, they were like elbowing each other to try to get their sizes they wanted before they ran out. But there was high demand for it. And we all know, a t-shirt, like this is budget friendly. So maybe it's something like that you do where you're like, oh, my people, yeah. Maybe they would want a t-shirt over something else. But think about what your people like. If you don't know, ask them. Ask them what they care about. Because you may find that 80% of your folks care about animals, or 25% of them have some sort of condition that's impacted their family. And so you can lean into something because that's what your employees care about. But if you don't know, this is the perfect chance to ask. And you can also see, as Marcie asked earlier, she wears lots of hats and she's the person. She has two people. They're the people. But maybe there's another person, because it doesn't have to be you at your organization. You don't have to be the CEO. You don't have to be the head of finance or the head of HR. You just need to bring some passion. And it could be you regardless of the role that you have in your organization, because organizations like mine need each and every one of you. If you're going to write the note, if you're going to serve on a board, if you're going to hand out a Christmas gift, if you're going to connect someone to a veteran, whatever it is, I would encourage all of you to think, what is your role in this? And it could be now, without realizing it, that you're raising your hand and saying, oh my goodness, I think that's me, because you came to this session, first of all. So you automatically care. Or you're thinking, oh, I've got the perfect person or people that can lead this effort, and we can start small. And so, as Krista mentioned earlier, if it's being involved with your local United Way, I'm happy to connect you there. My information's on the app for this session. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to connect you. But you don't have to have me. I think hopefully today there have been enough ideas shared where you can think, oh, I can do that. And even if it seems small, know that there's a ripple down effect of that.
And I think to add to that, you don't have to be the CEO, like you said. You can be the employee that just has an idea for something and then seek that out in your organization. And maybe you're the start of it. It doesn't have to come from, because we're all busy in the day to day, going to work, taking care of the kids, all of the things. But when you have the idea, take that and run with that and do one thing, because that matters. And that's where you start, like with the note. Marcie, you wanted to share?
Yeah. Yes. So I also understand, right? When I started in the business, my father-in-law ran it. And I've always had a heart for community. And I remember I said, hey, Dad, what if we go do a can drive? He's like, we don't need to do those things, right? I'm sure you guys have some bosses, all right? Like that's real, right? And so you fast forward, I'm in a seat. However, I didn't bring a whole lot. There are a couple scattered. This could be something that you bring up to that person, whatever it is. What we did is we did an impact report that is community friendly. So again, the family I'm married into are life scrappers. They speak in tons, right? I tell my husband, nobody knows what a ton is. Speak in pounds, right? And so what we do is we take the information that he just naturally is ingrained. And what I do is I simplify it. I'm like, what does that look like? Right? What does that many tons equal to? And so if you see this, and again, I don't have very many, but if you want to take a picture, this could be something that you show to that person, right? That says, we don't need to do that. And maybe something like this could convince them that it's good business, right? Because I understand your heart may be community, but there's people who are business first. Take a picture of this, run with it. This could be a flyer that you print on your printer, right? Take what you've already produced and what has it created? ReMA speaks a lot to that. What comes of our outcome? This is what we did. Right now, this we leverage when we get a new account. This we leverage when we go to Earth Day. This we leverage when I have an event. This has been very easy for us to have because it doesn't matter on what angle, business or not. So again, we have a couple of these spread out, but start there with your upline if they're dollars first.
Wonderful. Any last round of questions over here?
Yeah, Marcie, as you're talking about, I thought I was loud enough. Thank you. As you were talking about your father-in-law, and as it pertains to my dad, who's 82, and probably for many of you guys out there who work with somebody from the older generation, scrap yards were, it was better to be out of sight and out of mind. Like pushing ourselves to the forefront seemed like a bad idea. So being forward facing in the community, they don't seem to understand that. They don't necessarily, like you were saying, see that cost benefit analysis that is a net positive. But we've really found, really since 2000, it seemed like it broke with the millennium, that being aligned with both our customers, our manufacturing customers, our corporate customers, and our community in times of need, because they identified with us as part of their community. When we were attacked, they were attacked. And I cannot bolster how important I think what you're doing at Comal really is.
Thank you. And the thing is, right, again, someone's going to hear your story. You get to tell it first, right? I can tell about my father-in-law. I can get the heartstrings. Somebody contacted me in the industry and they wanted to know what the secret sauce was. And I said, there is no secret sauce. He goes, well, I have all these facts about air and this and that. And I'm like, facts are great when you're in court. When you have a mom who drives by your yard and they think that the smoke you're producing is killing their child, facts are out. We're in survival brain, right? That's a reality, right? Get to tell your story first, right? And yeah, I mean, will you get some pushback from within? Probably. But it really is worth, right? You getting to that story first. And I love what you said, because for us in our yard, when the city moved us back in the 70s, they sent us far, far away. Far, far. There was nothing there. We were at the end of the planet. Now we're surrounded by $1 million homes. We're less than a quarter of a mile from an open river. We're in a historic district. I mean, if you said, where do you not put a yard? We're kind of it. That's why you need to go out there first, because now those people are fighting our battles. We're in rooms we're not even physically in, right? Because they're telling our story for us, but we got to tell it first.
Right. Social media too. That's another thing to leverage, to use that to your advantage, to be, out there and part of it, because the misconception of what a yard is or isn't, what we do, what we don't do, if we're a benefit or, or not. That is something we need to flip the script on. And that's kind of what you're talking about, is that it was, fences and no offense, but the conception is an old guy with a cigar and a Doberman. They may not look like Marcie or myself. But when you turn that around and you bring kids in, we had a Daisy troop come in because the mom had seen a metal ID kit and books that we dropped off at the school. And there's a recycle badge that the Girl Scouts have. And to see these little girls in their hard hats and their vests and asking actually really good questions as first graders, they'll hopefully remember that. And they live there and they're right down the street from us where they go to school. So.
And true to form, we've talked about before we go, we talked about what it would look like to be of service to you guys, right? So we've talked about if you want to share a contact, maybe there's something that we can do to support, right? And kind of keep the conversation going.
Ideas, brainstorming, share what you do.
Yeah, let us know because we want to be of service to y'all.
Because I guarantee if you share it to ReMA or you tag ReMA on it, they will put it out there. And that will expand your reach in even the simplest of things.
Yeah, so feel free to leverage us for you all.
Anybody else? And I think with that, we are at time. So thank you, Brittany, David, Marcie. It's been great. Appreciate your time, and hopefully we've shared some ideas.